What's up, everybody? Welcome to the National Chumps Podcast. I'm your boy Bird.
No Rev!
And I'm done.
Yeehaw!
All right, welcome back to National Chumps. Today we're going to be bringing you some immediate feedback on the top four seeds from each region in college basketball. We're going to get the Ken Palm ranking in there as well to further discuss that. And we'll also be throwing somebody else in the Chump Bucket today.
Exciting.
Can't wait.
So watch out for that. Sharks in the water around here as we're going to throw somebody in the Chump Bucket. So we're going to get started right away. And let's get into this top four seeds in each region. So if we're looking over in the South region, they'll have your first four seeds there. So you have number one, Auburn.
Not a surprise,
Not
honestly.
shocking. Number one overall national seed. They played the best.
Gotta be.
And this also came out before they beat Alabama, so
Yeah.
for sure number one.
So you have Auburn, Texas A&M sitting at 2. Then you got Wisconsin at 3, and Texas Tech at 4. How do we feel about those top four seeds in the South region?
Not sure I agree with the Wisconsin, but you also got to think there's 4 other seeds in each other region. Just not feeling the Wisconsin. I don't know what it is. I just don't think that they have deserved to be up there, especially when coming around to, the tournament time. What other seeds could be better?
I saw this region, and my first thought was, what a brutal draw for Auburn.
Oh,
Yeah, I thought the
100%.
same exact thing, to
Like-
be honest, too.
You have the two of the hottest teams in America right now in Texas Tech and Wisconsin.
oh yeah.
Like, that's brutal. But the selection committee loves a little drama
Oh, yeah.
on Selection Sunday.
So I think that South region's one to look hot. Keep your eyes out for because there could be some drama, some upsets there for sure.
For sure. And when you compare it to the Midwest region, right? So if you
Yeah,
take a look at the
you
Midwest.
got one in the Midwest.
Number one in the Midwest right now is the University of Alabama.
Okay,
Kansas is the 4 seed. Purdue is the 2.
disagree with
And
that.
Iowa State's the 3. I don't know why Kansas is a top 4 seed. I will never understand the love for Kansas. And I think,
Man, they do the same thing every year.
Yeah,
Every year they do the same exact thing.
how many times have they had a meltdown this year and they've blown significant leads in a game?
100%.
And you're telling me that team is a top 16 in America?
I mean, we still have a month till March Madness. That could change. I think they're on the brink for me of being one of the one of those teams on the close to being out of the tournament,
Yeah,
or at least that high of a ranking for sure.
I definitely think that they end up on the bubble somehow.
Yeah,
Somehow, some way, they'll end up on the bubble.
I mean, but when you take a look at the Big 12, the other 4 teams that you have in there, you have Texas Tech, you have Iowa State,
Yep.
You have Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
and you have Houston.
Yep.
Right? So those are your
Ooh, I love
Those are
me
your-
some Houston. Dude.
See, I'm not as keen on Houston as I have been in years past. But
They're a little up and down.
right now they're number 3 in the Ken Palm. And if you're looking at that first matchup in the South region, like if you're looking at Auburn and Texas Tech right there, Texas Tech right now, their net rating has them at 7th in the Ken Palm, and they're a 4 seed.
Oh,
Yeah,
So that's it's kind of just showing you the
We'll go back.
landscape of everything right now. It's still very, very murky. And there's definitely going to be some exciting matchups along the way. We look in the East, we have Duke, St. John's, Tennessee, and Arizona.
I think Arizona is one of those teams you need to be on the lookout for getting into the Elite Eight, Final Four, just because they can finish games, and they've proven that a multitude of times this year.
they can score the basketball.
They can score
and they
the
score
basketball.
very well, and they're fast.
But then
Yeah.
they were matched up against Houston this week, lost by 4, and only put up 58 points.
But
On the road,
the big
at
dude,
home.
hey, Houston has always predominantly had a huge team. Okay, they bang in the paint.
You
They
bet,
shoot
you
from
bet,
outside.
you bet they bang in the paint.
You bet they bang, right? They just all out defense. They pride themselves on defense and just being absolute dominant in the paint. So I think if teams don't know how to stop that, which for Arizona, a team like Arizona in the Final Four or the national championship, it could hurt them because they're a fast playing team. How do you match up well with such a big, roster?
Well, that's what March comes down to, right?
Every
we
time.
take a look at a team like Alabama, right?
Yeah.
And Alabama can score. They average between 76 and 80 possessions a game, like outworldly fast.
Yeah.
And they're willing to play up tempo.
Gotta
They're
get
willing
those
to
big
spread
guys
the
moving.
floor,
Gotta get those big guys
and they're
moving.
moving, right? But then what happens if they play somebody who's slowing them down, makes them play half-court offense? It makes them uncomfortable.
An Alabama-Houston
Auburn
game
team.
would be awesome.
It would be
Yeah.
awesome. And like we saw last year with Alabama, right? They played at a similar pace. This year they're playing faster, believe it or not,
Yeah.
right? But they played a team like Grand Canyon, who was also willing to run out the gym with them. It was a track meet.
It was.
And it came down to the last couple shots. So it all is dependent on matchups, which makes a March so much fun, right? That's where the Cinderella and the little guy
Oh yeah.
comes into play.
So excited.
But
for March around.
I can't buy into Arizona being a national championship team.
I can't either.
Like, even Final Four. Like, I don't know if they have to come out of a bracket with Duke and Tennessee, they're not going to.
That is a tough draw for us.
Yeah.
Like if I'm
can't
Duke,
sleep on St. John's either. Though.
No.
They could also come out of that
But if you-
bracket.
I know we
Rick
talked. I know we talked
Pitino.
last week about how much we like Rick Pitino, but I just can't. I can't buy into St. John's
But
yet.
if you get a matchup between Tennessee and St. John's, hammer the under. Neither team will get to 50. It'll be an elite grudge match in the paint.
Yes, it
There'll
will.
be elbows, technical fouls, flagrant ones, and it'll be awesome.
Amen.
Like, if you look at it, because then we can look at the South region or the West region, excuse me, and we have Florida, Michigan, Houston, and Kentucky.
I hate it.
All those teams are really, really boring to me.
Hello, Cinderella.
I think Michigan, as much as I love Michigan, born in Ann Arbor,
Yeah.
I don't know if they have enough depth to really get it done, especially if you got to play a team like Florida, who just they have some of the best big men in the country.
Yeah.
So they have elite size.
And
They have
they're really good. They're playing the toughest conference in college basketball. I mean, even our SEC hater here in the middle can agree that it's
The
hands
SEC
down the
is-
best conference. in
SEC's
college basketball.
elite this year.
Yeah, it's
Elite.
crazy. I would be shocked to see what the odds are to see conference champion tournament winner, because I bet SEC is probably sitting at like plus 180, plus 220.
Yeah.
It's got to be somewhere in there. They're going to have the most teams in the tournament,
For
just
sure.
top to bottom. Like,
There's a potential to end up with all 4 1 seeds.
Yeah.
Like, that is a possibility. It's crazy to think that. But with Houston losing, right, if Duke slips up anymore, if they lose potentially 1 or 2 more games, Tennessee just slides right into that 1 slot.
yep. And really, you look at the way the bracket could be set up. Could be an all SEC Final Four.
It's certainly possible.
It would be.
Yeah,
You were just
Yeah.
talking. You were just talking last episode about how Duke's best team in the country because they have Cooper Flag.
Okay, that doesn't matter. I'm still an SEC guy through and through, every sport.
So
So
then how
I'd
could-
love to see it.
How could you say that and then
It doesn't-
go right back on it and say Duke's the best?
It doesn't
team in the
matter. I can have two viewpoints. I could love the SEC and everything that they do, but I can also love Duke and Cooper Flag
You like
and
those,
hope that they.
you're like
make
the
it there.
people who don't cheer for the USA team in hockey because they don't have Sidney Crosby, and you've loved Sidney Crosby your whole life. Like, that's just—it's so
Just
stupid.
digging one deep.
Oh,
Digging one deep.
man, like it's just ridiculous to me that you can cheer for a conference but yet say that they don't have the best team when they're hands down the best conference.
I just love the reference.
Look, I mean, it's just like I'm a huge Big Ten guy. That's my conference. It's the teams I'm most familiar with. Minnesota. I've won a few NCAA college football championships on PlayStation 5 with Northwestern. I love the Big Ten, but they're not as good this year.
Yeah,
Like, Purdue lost Zach Edey, and it seems like the whole conference just forgot how to play basketball.
but they're still rolling. They're still in one of those top 4 positions.
Well, yeah, they're gonna be because that's just how college sports works. Like, you're not gonna put a McNeese in the top 4 unless they do something really, really special.
Yeah.
And if you look to the adjusted rate of offensive efficiency, right? Like,
Ooh.
all those
nerd.
all those Big Ten teams, right? From 1 all the way down through 8. All those Big Ten teams are globbed into areas where they can play really fast on offense or they can play really slow on defense. They're very good at going both ways compared to a team like Alabama where the tempo's elite,
Yeah.
But what happens when the tempo's not elite? Right? What happens when they can't score 90 points a night and they're forced to slow the pace
Yeah.
and they get uncomfortable? What's
This
gonna
guy
happen?
just loves Ryan Hammer and that trapezoid of excellence.
Ryan Hammer and the trapezoid of excellence. The dude doesn't miss.
He does.
No, he doesn't. Like
He doesn't.
Right?
it's crazy. He's got to figure it out
He's
to
got his
a
specialty.
T.
Ryan Hammer 9. Go check him out. Might help you
Amen.
March Madness bracket.
Amen.
It'd be nice if he said he could check us out too.
Yeah.
National Chumps. Don't forget of us, Ryan Hammer. We're getting at least 13 people coming your way.
Amen.
But it's fun to just see those top 4 seeds come out because now you start really thinking about putting that bracket together.
Yeah.
Like for me, just sitting there and making 20 college basketball brackets and knowing that none of them are going to be good, just something about it just makes me feel so good.
The strive for perfection. It's
Yeah,
just-
that's exactly what people are aiming for sure.
It would be the world's best parlay.
It would.
It would be the
It
world's
would.
best parlay,
It would be.
and it wouldn't even be close.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's just there's so much madness that happens, and we bet enough mid-major basketball too, where I think you've said it before. Your wife has come in, and you're watching like Drake versus
George Mason.
Yeah, it's just these
Fire
weird
up.
matchups, and it's like, is that college real? It's like it is, and this
LIU.
team could be a 13 seed that upsets that number 4.
LIU Brooklyn at Central Connecticut State.
Yeah.
Like, fires me up.
Fires me up.
I
Fires me
know
up.
we're ways out to seeing the matchups, but you look at those 16 teams that are in there right now.
Yeah.
Which one is the most susceptible to losing around one game?
Kansas.
I think it's Kansas.
I think it's got to be Kansas.
It could be, but
Kansas, Purdue's
I also
on the
think-
line for me.
I also think Kentucky is in that
Oh,
conversation.
100%.
as well.
Those would be my top 3 for automatic upset.
Like, and I like watching Kentucky basketball. They're like you said a couple weeks ago when we were talking just amongst ourselves. Like they're fun. They bring in all these great recruits, especially when they had Coach Cal. Really like their coach now, by the way.
Yeah.
Just a former Kentucky guy. He's just trying to make that program as great as it can be, but just doesn't help that he's in the toughest conference in college basketball. He's a first-year
Yeah.
coach.
I also think St. John's is definitely in that picture. Like, don't get me wrong, Rick Pitino's great, but like we've talked about, like they
Yeah.
can't really shoot from the outside.
Yeah.
So what happens when they give up a 10-0 run? Are they going to be able to shoot themselves back into the game? That's going to be difficult, especially if they're playing a team that runs the up-tempo offense
Yeah.
and wants to run them out the gym. Like if they get paired up with like a Grand Canyon who wants to run,
Yeah.
like they're in trouble. If they end up with Yale, who can shoot from the outside and play interior defense,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't even think St.
Ivy
John's
League
is in the top.
upsets. Ivy League upsets are always fun.
Oh yeah. I don't
Always
think
fun.
St. John's is in like the top 5 for 3-point percentages on the year.
Where are they
so
at Ken Pop?
St. John's and the Ken Palm is at 18.
yeah, it's they're
you-
gonna
They've just won a lot of close games. They've
Yeah.
won a lot of games that they're
They have
not supposed to win if you argue it that way, right? Like they beat UConn, they beat
Yeah.
Marquette. It's like
their net rating has them at 18, obviously, but their defensive rating is 2. So St. John's puts
St. John's-
the
They can
clamps
play-
on people.
they can play lockdown defense for sure.
Yeah.
But I also think that that's a product of the Big East. Right? The Big East doesn't have a lot of guys who are willing to shoot the ball from outside, right?
No.
Like even Creighton, who can shoot from the outside, would prefer to play interior offense.
yeah.
Right?
How fast does Gonzaga leave the tournament this year?
Oh, I
Do
mean,
they make it far?
I don't know
Do they
that
get to their-
if
do
we're
they get
if
to
we're
the
looking
Sweet
at
16?
terms of
what happens if they
you
don't
know,
win the West Coast Conference? Are they
Because
in?
that's certainly a possibility.
St. Mary's
Yeah.
could beat them again.
I agree, but I don't know. I think
They'll be in.
they'll be in. I think if we're looking at stuff like Ken Palm, if we're looking at field percentages, if we're looking at offensive and defensive proficiency, they're in the top 5 in a lot of those categories. So I think when they are on their game, when they're being consistent, that is a team that can at least get a win or 2 in the tournament. I don't think I'm not knocking Gonzaga out, like we did with those first 3 teams.
Right now, Joe Lunardi's got them as an 8 seed. Right, so they play the
That's
8-9 matchup.
sneaky
right?
8 seed right there,
But then if they win that game, they get the 1 seed in whichever region that they're in.
and that's going to be a tough 8 seed to beat.
It is a
in
tough
my
8 seed to
opinion.
beat, but also like
Gonzaga.
they haven't played anybody in almost 2 months now, 3 months now. Right? They play
Gonzaga's-
St. Mary's.
They play a great team twice a year,
Yep.
and then they go to the tournament and they find a way to blow it.
Because
Do you think that's on them, or do you think that's on their conference?
it's on their conference?
It's on
right?
their conference, yeah.
Because-
Like, it has to be.
It's no disrespect to the West Coast Conference, but if they were elite, they would be getting more than 1 or 2 teams in. And generally, if they get 2 teams in, it's Gonzaga and St. Mary's, and then everybody else is left to themselves.
So do you think?
Which, by the way, the West Coast Conference tournament is probably the wildest bracket you'll ever see in your life.
Do you think if Gonzaga, happened to move into the SEC basketball range, do you think they do predominantly better in tournament scenarios?
I think they'd be a 500 team, maybe a little bit above that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just not getting the big names like they used to either. Like, I think the biggest name that they've had in the last 5-10 years is probably Jalen Suggs.
Drew Timmy?
Yeah, what
I
did
mean,
he...
Drew Timmy did put the team on his back for 2 years.
Yeah.
And Drew Timmy was fun to watch.
He was legit.
Gonzaga's always got 1 or 2 white guys that know how to hoop.
Yeah.
And, there's not a lot of teams that do that anymore except for, like, Creighton.
Wisconsin.
And
And
there's
Wisconsin. Can't forget about Wisconsin.
and there's a reason why they never made the jump to the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Right? That invite was probably open years ago when we started conference realignment,
Yeah.
but it wasn't taken. Why? Because
No one wanted to play in the Pac-12.
also Gonzaga got to go to the tournament every year, right? Because
Yeah.
you got to remember the tournament's also a moneymaker for some of these schools,
Yeah,
right?
yep,
Yeah.
that's
And
true
so
too.
if you're guaranteed a lock to get into the tournament every year and make a couple of extra $100,000,
Yeah,
and
why
as you
not?
make the run, you get millions, right? It just changes everything.
All right, as always, we got the Chump Bucket out here.
Yes, sir.
We're looking forward to throwing some shade at some teams that just are a little chumpy. So, we have a couple of options in mind to throw into the Chump Bucket.
Number 1,
Who's your number one to throw in the Chump Bucket?
UNC.
The University of North Carolina?
Yes.
Are you serious?
I am completely serious. Where are they at? Are they in the top 25?
They're on the bubble.
Are they in the top 25?
They're on the bubble.
Doesn't
is that
matter.
Not, is that not good
They're
enough
not in
for
the
you?
top 25. They haven't been this year. Barely last year. Okay. Who's their last predominant team? 2 years ago.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I can't really disagree with you about North Carolina. I mean, when you are a blue blood program, your expectation is similar to SEC football, and it's
Amen.
championship or
Amen.
bust. And North Carolina definitely has not been living up to that. So, due to that, we are going to put North Carolina in the Chump Bucket because they're chumpy. And
Very, very jumpy.
a team that should be a hell of a lot better than what they've been putting out the last few years. Obviously, this transition from Roy Williams to their new head coach, it's taken some time, maybe.
Yeah.
Just putting that as nicely as possible, it's taken some time to transition that program.
But when you have Michael Jordan as one of your biggest supporters, do you get time?
I don't think so. I don't think you should.
They should be, just like their football team, running up the NIL deals, and they're not. You have the ability to literally, put money out and buy these kids to have better recruiting classes. And, even if they are in the top,
Kids, Coach Cruz. Dang, son.
Why are you getting out recruited by Rutgers?
exactly why? Why are you?
Speaking of which, Rutgers, you have one of the best recruiting classes you're ever going to get for the Scarlet Knights. And you're not even 500.
Not even. What's up with that?
That's a chump bucket for me.
Yeah.
Because I am tired of seeing these great players like Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, 5-star recruits coming out of high school.
Yeah.
4th best high school recruiting class in the country last year. And when you're in a league that's one and done, freshmen leave you, you better find a way to win with what you have right in front of you. And Rutgers just has not been doing that. In a year where it seems like the Big Ten is a little messy, right?
Yeah.
Michigan isn't dominating. Like, for the Big Ten, not really. They're doing well. They're the best team in the Big Ten right now.
Michigan State's fallen off the last month. They lost 3 games this month. Granted, 2 of them did come on the West Coast swing.
I do like watching Michigan State just lose. I don't know why. It's not. I'm more of a Michigan fan myself. Okay, when it comes to college basketball, college football, I just can't stand the Michigan State Spartans.
I have a soft spot for Tom Izzo,
I
even
do
though I'm a
as well.
Michigan guy. But Michigan State, they haven't won a championship in a long time either. And they're what you would probably consider a top tier blue chip blue blood program. But
Because I mean, it goes January, February, ASO, right?
yes,
That's how
that is how it goes.
Like, you don't get that just because.
It wouldn't
Yeah.
surprise any of us if Michigan State won the Big Ten.
Yeah.
The way Rutgers is playing this year, I would be shocked if they made a run in the Big Ten tournament and found a way to win.
Yeah,
It has not gone well.
they went out to Eugene and then just got overrated.
Yeah.
And Oregon been struggling last month.
So you have the Messy Conference on top of one of the best recruiting classes you're ever going to get.
Yeah.
And sorry, but you're probably not going to get that recruiting class again after this year. Therefore, that's my Chump Bucket nominee this week. Rutgers Scarlet Knights basketball. Figure it the fuck out. And when you have that much talent, you got to find a way to win some basketball games. At least more than you lose.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely in agreement here. Like, I had my Chump Bucket last week. You guys said your Chump Bucket this week, and I think that all three of our Chump Buckets are definitely worthy.
Amen.
If you're going to have a championship mentality and a championship effort, you can't find yourself anywhere near the Chump Bucket.
Yeah.
And that's why we haven't mentioned the teams that are of the elite, like we talked about today. And hopefully, we see some of these teams do well in their conference tournament, get hot into March Madness, and then when we get to March Madness, let the madness happen.
Amen.
Like, subscribe, follow along.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully, we continue to grow this podcast. We appreciate all of you listeners.
Shout out
We'll
to
see
all
ya.
the chumps following along week 2. We appreciate you guys.
And stay tuned because one of those teams that we talked about today that weren't chumps, that top 16, you bet your ass they're probably going to find their way to this Chump Bucket at least.
Amen.